So this is titled Protostomes. As you can see, it's quite long. It will probably take us the rest of the week, maybe into Monday. Wait, I don't see Monday. Possibly into Tuesday. So this is going to be a really long chapter. So here's the branch that we're looking at. You can't see where we ended, but we're going to talk about the Spirilias versus the Dysozoans, and then break it down even further and start with the Platyzoans, move to the Lophotrochozoas, and then the Igdysians. So this is where we were last chapter. We covered these 4 phylums, and so now we're going to tackle this in this chapter. Okay. So the protostomes can be broken down into Spirilia or Igdysozoans. And remember, Spirilia is the spiral cleavage during the early stages of the embryonic development. Most of these organisms live in the water. They'll have cilia or use body contractions to move. But the Spirilians can be subdivided even further to the Platyzoans and the Lophotrochozoans. So I'm going to talk about another type of flatworm called the Platyhelmets. How they got a very, very complex reproductive structure system to them. Platyzoans are mostly acoelomates, and they are really, really flat. I'm going to show you a video of them. They kind of move with ciliary action, kind of ribbon-like, if you will. Some do have some extremely complicated jaws. But yeah, so some examples of platyhelminthes: flatworms, flukes, tapeworms. I think leeches are part of that. The Lophotrochozoans are made up of 2 major phyla and several smaller ones, but the ones that we're going to really discuss are the trochophores, which is just a special type of free-living larva. We find them in the phylum Mollusca and Annelids. I'm not sure if we'll get to Mollusca. Mollusca is a really, really big section. And then the Lophophore, it's characterized by a horseshoe or U-shaped crown of ciliated tentacles, and they surround the mouth and they kind of move and help filter feed. So the organisms that we'll discuss with the Lophophores are the Bryozoas and the Brachiopodas. So Bryozoas, again, almost flowery-like, if you will. It's like, what's the plant clade that we just covered? The mosses. Why can't I think of it? Thank you. Is that what they're called? Yeah, bryophytes. So they lay low on the ground. So you can see that they're still using the same prefix here.
What was section 34.1 called again?
So that's the Spirilia. So now I'm just going to briefly talk about the Dysozoans, and then we're actually going to jump into a phylum here, the Platyhelminthes. So, yep, no problem. Good. All right. So the Dysozoas. just as a segue, I think he was just looking for someone, which is not a good thing. We just heard sirens today, didn't we? Okay, so the Dysozoans, they are called Dysozoas because they go through a process where they shed or molt their external skeleton called an exoskeleton, and that's how they grow larger in size. I will talk more about this process when we get to arthropods. It is a very, very delicate process. It's not easy for insects to do because when they do this, they're vulnerable, they're in a weakened state, so a lot of times they try to hide and then shed their exoskeleton so they're not easily preyed upon by predators. But the basic steps, underneath their exoskeleton, they're growing the new one, and eventually it's going to, crack through the existing exoskeleton. So their body will swell, crack open, and then kind of like break out of that, and they shed everything. I mean, we're talking about like the lining of their digestive tract, their eyeballs, the outside surface of it. It's everything gets shed and is renewed. So if they could easily rip off an eyeball. So it's a very delicate process. And then when they get out of that shell, they are usually pale and soft, and they have to wait for the exoskeleton to harden, basically kind of harden a little bit. And I have a typo that I just noticed. It is larger than the molted one. So they have room to grow a new one underneath that. So arthropods, we'll talk about them. Nematodes, we'll discuss them in depth as well. So. Yep. Okay, review question. Select a statement that is correct concerning protostomes and deuterostomes.
B?
Yeah.
Because I got B and C.
Yep. So all of these statements are correct. They're in each clade. Mouth for the protostome, deuterostome. Mouth does not develop from the blastropore. Yeah. Select the true comment about Spiralia. Sorry, what? D, yes, they use spiral cleavage as embryos. Select the statement that is not true with respect to Dysozoas. Not true. Actually, it does include the fruit fly. It does. Fruit flies are great model organisms. I guess this is a terrible question because I didn't really go in depth about it. It's B, growth is continuous. So growth is continuous, like how we grow would be continuous. We're not shedding new things. So we just continue on. But with the Dysozoans, they have to shed everything. So it's not continuous. Of the following, which are Dysozoans? A, nematodes. Which of the following attributes does not belong to the lophophores?
C? Is it E?
It's E. All of them are. So lophophores, they have the U-shaped ridge. It includes bryozoa and brachiopoda. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to platyzoans, flatworms. This is by far my favorite section, just because of the video that I will show you. Okay. So some background.
What was the flatworm?
Sorry. The Platyhelmets. So you can see now that I have this section in red. So everything in red is about the platyzoans, flatworms, Platyhelmets. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, they are ciliated, they are soft, they are flat, hence the name flatworms. You find them in marine ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, and even moist terrestrial habitats. A lot of them are actually parasitic. but there are some carnivores and scavengers out there. And then they move by ciliated epithelial cells. So.
What is dorsal ventrally?
Flattened dorsal ventral. So you flatten it, and then one side is the back, and then the other side's the belly. It's not flattened like sideways, or you'd say laterally. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some key characteristics of these platyhelminths or flatworms. So one of the special features about flatworms is that their gut is incomplete. They just have a single opening to their digestive cavity. No circulatory system. Their gut kind of takes over for distributing materials. So it's branched, it kind of extends throughout the entire body. We have a lot of diffusion going on with gases. It digests the foods and then distributes the nutrients through phagocytosis, that, the cells that line that gut. If the flatworm is considered parasitic, then they don't have a digestive system at all, because food is just absorbed through the body cell walls, or walls of the organism. Right, final bullet point here, they do have a mouth. It's underneath. I'll show you kind of a cartoon diagram so you get a better idea. But it is complex, strong sucking force, because tapeworms belong into this category. So they can ingest food and they can also tear food to bits. So here's what a flatworm kind of looks like. These are the eye spots, and then underneath is where you'd find the mouth. It does have the ability to, go through excretion using flame cells, get rid of nitrogenous waste products, if you will. But it's also used to help regulate its water balance, since they live in aquatic ecosystems. So throughout their entire body, they have these fine tubules, and if you zoom in on a tubule, it has a specialized cell called a flame cell. So flatworms, flame cells. That's them. That's kind of another unique thing about flatworms. You can also find in the flame cell, I told you that they move with ciliary or cilia action, contractions. That's also where you find that. So yeah. Okay, nervous system. It's basically a concentration of nerves, but it's made up of anterior cerebral ganglion. So you find that up here. Anterior for head, cerebral also means head, and ganglion means a cluster or concentration of nerve cells. And then we have nerve cords on both sides, okay, that run down the flatworm to send messages. And then they also have 2 eye spots, and really they just detect light from dark, and they tend to move away from strong light sources. Okay, the final thing I want to talk about flatworms before I jump into the cases or different classes, not cases, different classes of flatworms, is how they reproduce, which is very, very complex. So most of them are hermaphroditic, which means they have both male and female sex structures, but they can't breed just by themselves. Okay, copulation is required, fertilization is eternal. So yeah, fertilization is eternal. If you take a flatworm and you cut it up into tiny pieces, as you can see here, poor flatworm, each of those tiny pieces will actually turn into a flatworm. So that is another way they can reproduce, kind of clone in asexually. Each bit will grow into a new individual. Now, because they're hermaphroditic, they don't really have like sexes, you know, like a girl flatworm or a boy flatworm or whatever. So they actually have to undergo a process called, for lack of better terms, penis fencing. They fight each other to figure out who is going to be the mom, the female, and who's going to be the male. So like I said, this is probably a very, very complex life cycle. This is just one way that they fertilize. There's a few other ways they can fertilize. Like eggs can be laid in the ribbons, and then, you know, it might be fertilized that way. Actually, no, they only do internal fertilization. What am I trying to say? Some of them lay eggs, some of them like bear children, and it goes out. Some of them form little cocoons that will eventually hatch out new flatworms. But I have a little comic strip here. It says tuberella flatworms are hermaphroditic with viable male and female sex organs. Pretty great, I know. But because of this, when it comes to reproduction, who's going to be the mother is up for debate. And it turns out that being pregnant is hard work. So these worms fight it out. And by fight it out, I mean they pull out their dagger-like penises and try to stab sperm through the other's flesh. The loser gets pregnant first. The loser gets pregnant first. And I don't finish the rest of it because I'd probably get in trouble for the comic strip. But I'm going to show you a video of this. Okay, so I will do that. Need to exit. So Spike TV, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Spike TV, but it was a TV channel, and it was like a channel for men, and you know, they would post wrestling. I mean, that's where you would find all those kinds of sports. But they had like a TV show where they talked about penis fencing in these species. I can't find that clip anymore. I mean, they literally had like placed their bets, and they'd like ring a boxing bell, and they would fight. I mean, it was like, yeah. And I, you know, when I first taught this, it was on YouTube. I found it, and now I can't find it anywhere. So I found something from Nat Geo Wild. Still, you know, it's just not as fun, but you know, gets the point across. Oh, I gotta hook up my speakers.
Flatworms have both male and female sex organs. But when it comes time to make little flatworms, they have to decide who plays which role. And that they fight over. The two flatworms rear up, exposing their midsections. Those jutting white nibs aren't weapons, at least not intentional ones. They are actually the worm's penises, a double-barreled inseminator, if they can shoot first. Flatworm sex consists of the two attempting to stab their lover with their pointed pair and inseminate each other.
What?
An act delicately referred to as penis fencing.
But only one. Yeah.
But there's nothing delicate about it. Flatworms have been known to gouge holes in each other in battles lasting up to an hour. Why do they cross swords? Producing offspring requires a lot of energy. The winning father can go out and about in the world without any further responsibility. The losing mother absorbs the winner's sperm. It must now work longer and harder to find food and stay alive. The father floats merrily along. The mother crawls along looking for a meal, already the responsible one.
Okay. So, different classes of flatworms. So the Tubularia, which was mentioned in the comic, free-living flatworms, has been considered a class. Recent data shows it's not monophyletic, so there might be some changes further down. Who knows? And then the NeoDermata. Nope, I'm saying that wrong. NeoDermata. There we go. NeoDermata, which is the parasitic flatworms. So those are the two big classes. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some subgroups underneath the NeoDermata, just because of their impact on humans with flatworms and parasites, if you will. But the NeoDermata, they're called NeoDermata because of their outer surface, which is called the neodermis. It's resistant to digestive enzymes, as well as the immune defense systems of animals, making them perfect to be living inside of that organism. You know, it's tougher to fight those parasites. They lack eye spots because you don't need eye spots if you're living inside of an organism where it's dark. So they've lost that. And then there are two subgroups, the Termitoda, which are the flukes. think leeches fit in that. I really should look that up. And then I'm going to talk about the Circumeromorpha, which is the tapeworms and their relatives. Okay, so final slide about the Platyhelmets here, the NeoDermata. So Dermatodes, the flukes, they have ways to attach themselves to the bodies of hosts, either using suckers or a type of anchor or a type of hook. The life cycles of flukes usually only involve one host, and it's usually a fish because flukes tend to live in aquatic ecosystems. But some do require two hosts, or I should say maybe most of them do require two hosts. And for some reason, your book says it's always a snail as the first one, and then the second one turns into that vertebrate organism that it affects. The suckers, anchors, and hooks, they are not considered the head. A lot of people think that that's the head of the organism. It's not. They also have a specialized attachment structure called the scolex. It's got 4 hookers and 4 suckers or a hook. But again, the scolex is not part of the head. And you'll see that down here with the tapeworms too, scolex, neck, protoglottids. But yeah. So tapeworms, the adult form, what they do is they latch onto the wall of the intestine of their host. They don't need a digestive cavity because pretty much the food that they get is already digested, so they just take in and steal nutrients. And again, scolex, which is the attachment portion of that, neck, and then the protoglottis, which is just the repetitive segments of the tapeworm. And I can't believe I didn't put a picture of a tapeworm on here, but okay, so that's it for Platyhelmets. Review questions, and then I think we'll stop there for today. Which of these is a characteristic of a platyzoan?
Probably.
It's probably yes. Which statement concerning flatworm digestion is not true? Did you say D? Or did you say B? Oh, no, it's D. It's not dedicated to digestion because a lot of times it's used for the circulatory system. Which of the following is not a characteristic of reproduction in flatworms?
B.
They do have that.
D then.
It's D. They do internal fertilization. Yeah. True or false, flatworms do not belong to either the Spirulina or the Dysozoa and are acoelomates. It's true. Yep. I feel like maybe I should have moved that question to the last chapter. I feel like that fits it there better. Okay, so we'll stop it right there and pick it up tomorrow with another group of platyzoans, the rotifers.